This is Jablam Hockey with your hosts, Peter Wojcicki and Paul Swinbeck. Welcome to Jablam Hockey, folks. I'm your host, Peter Wojcicki. You can find me on Twitter at Russian98, and I am with
Paul Zwambag. You can find me at Zwambag, ZWAMBAG. How's it going, everybody? Peter, what's up?
I'm excited. We're only, 3.5 weeks away from, you know what?
NHL playoffs.
Oh, yes. My favorite time of the year. I'm getting giddy already. Not even at the fact that the Leafs actually have a chance at making the playoffs. But
that might help a little bit.
Yeah, of course. I really badly want them to make the playoffs, even just one round, just for, the experience for the kids. Just that little taste of it would be nice. And then for the starving Leafs Nation, of course, it would be nice to have playoffs like at least twice in like the last 10 years. So that would be exciting. And of course, I'm excited about the playoffs, the playoff pool that I always have. Excited about it. You never know. It's so unpredictable. There's always one or two sleepers that go fairly far, and that's fun. I like it. It's exciting, right?
It is a pretty good pool. It's an interesting pool. One I've never seen it run the way you run it, and it's kind of makes it cool. It means anybody can play.
Oh, for sure. I like, and of course it's a snake draft, but in groups of 5, so it doesn't get watered down, which is always good too. And of course with different positions that I like to add to it, defenseman, enforcer, and that means one player could be picked 3 times. So it's fun that way. But let's get into the show, and we'll talk a little more playoffs later. First, what do we have this episode? We are team ISOing the LA Kings. We have special guest Jesse Cohen of the podcast, the official podcast of the LA Kings, All the Kings Men. And then we will have a compare. Who will win the Metro Division? Me and Paul bicker over the 2 teams, of course, that are at the top, the Pens and the Caps. And then we have a few injuries that could be an impact to some playoff teams. And then we finish off with our Saturday's picks live on the show. We always put them on jablamhockey.com. But again, this week, since we're recording this on Friday, we'll say it in the episode. But first, trending now. We'll go with the interesting rumored guy right now to be MVP. Is it my boy, Brad Marchand? Could he possibly be an MVP candidate, Paul?
Oh, if he keeps up the pace that he's at right now, yeah, he definitely will be in the conversation.
I always knew he had it in him. Well, no, I really didn't. I always loved him from the beginning, and I knew he had the skills and potential to be a top player, maybe an all-star type player. But MVP? Wow. He's been on a tear even since the World Cup of Hockey, which I still thought maybe he should have been the MVP of the World Cup. But he's playing MVP hockey too this year.
Yeah, maybe that's in the back of his mind. He's like, man, I really want that MVP. I'm going to go out and get the NHL MVP. Screw all you guys.
Yeah, everybody thinks first of how, maybe he's a little dirty. But he has got some great skill, and with his grittiness and his extra energy that he puts on the ice, it gets him a lot more points too. So, where is he at right now? Is he in the lead?
He is in the lead.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he's above Connor McDavid.
Yes.
Perfect.
Or maybe they're tied. They might be tied.
They're around there.
They put him in the top spot on the NHL.com stats board. So.
Wow. Crazy. So there's a chance. He very much deserves to be at least nominated in this category at the moment. Looks like it. Who else would you nominate? McDavid, obviously.
And Brent Burns, maybe?
Brent Burns, maybe. So then he could be that second, maybe third option on that ballot for MVP this year. Obviously, we all think McDavid probably win the whole thing. But he could get MVP. He may even get an Art Ross. Wow. 2 trophies for Brad.
And the Rocket he could win. So
of course.
He could be taking home a lot of hardware at the awards show this year.
He could. Sneaky kid. All right, the Stars, they're kind of imploding on each other. I think Lindy Ruff was quoted saying, "That might be the worst game I ever coached as a Dallas Star. We need a lot more from the leaders of our team." I think they've been saying this for a while now for this team. It's pretty rough. Even Tyler Seguin was quoted after the Dallas 5-1 loss. "I thought we kind of hit rock bottom last game, but we got deeper tonight." Ouch.
Yeah, it's not sounding good.
It's tough because they've had a lot of man games lost, but we question their goaltending. You can't go with that tandem. They got to move on and get better goaltending. But the whole team around and with the injuries, it's been a rough year for.
Yeah, and Jamie Benn's been off all year, so it's kind of weird season for them. Their defensemen have been okay, but like, where's Klingberg gone to? Mm-hmm. Like, he's kind of fallen off the map. Yeah.
It looks like Ben's been playing injured maybe all season. So you were thinking maybe Ruff is going to be the next Coach Friar Day.
Yeah, I think he's going to get let go, and I think that's why Vegas has kind of held off naming a coach. They talked to Capuano, so Vegas kind of likes Jack Capuano, but I have a feeling they're waiting out till the end of the season to see what guys go, and if Lindy Ruff is there, I believe he's the Vegas Golden Knights coach.
Yeah, it's always good to maybe start with some veteran coaches. If it's Hitchcock or maybe a Ruff, they went with George McPhee as their GM. So, it's always good to start an organization with some solid, veteran leadership.
Yeah, and he was an assistant coach for Florida, I believe, when they became an expansion team. So he's kind of got that thought of how to run an expansion team. I think you run it much different than an actual team because you're not going to be very good. So I think Lindy Ruff's got that experience already, and I don't think many coaches have that expansion team experience coaching. So I think Lindy Ruff's going to be at the top of the list.
Yeah, there would only be a handful of guys that have been their expansion draft, expansion coaches. Maybe the Leafs have one in, when they first started. So that coach would be how old?
Oh, geez. Way up there.
Okay, so yes, obviously there wouldn't be that many coaches that were the first coach for expansion teams of this era. But let's go on. The other thing I wanted to mention for trending now was playoff percentages. The swing is so crazy, and if you look on Twitter, like I was watching like the Leaf game and they imploded and fell apart on the Panthers game, and everybody's like, the playoffs are over. The percentage obviously swung really far, especially when the teams like they're chasing, Bruins win, Panthers win, Lightning win or whatever. It's crazy, and then it swings 25% up or down when you're like right in there. So it's crazy. So then the Leafs win on Thursday, and it's a huge win again too. It's 5-0 against Tampa, so it swings 25% back up to 62% chance to make the playoffs. So it's wild, especially in the Eastern Conference here. Currently in the East, Bruins are at 88% chance to make the playoffs. Leafs, as I said, 62%. Lightning, 27%, and Isles, 24%. But if you're looking at the points, it's like one point difference. But wow, it's crazy. And we're going to post this on the game notes. But these percentages change so drastically with some of these games.
Yeah, my big worry for Toronto and all the Leaf fans and you, Peter, is the regulation and overtime wins. You guys are much lower than Boston.
If we want to catch them, we have to be above them.
Yeah, you can't just be in the tie. You are about the same as the Islanders in Tampa Bay, so that's helping you, but you got a lot of teams chasing that one last spot, and the Atlantic Division is still up in the air, I believe.
Yeah, you're still hoping maybe the Bruins can catch number one spot. But you know what? The Leafs, I think they have 2 games in hand on the Bruins. So if they were to somehow win both those 2 games, they just need one more point for the rest of the games over the Bruins to take that spot. So there's still a chance.
Yeah, but the Bruins are pretty hot right now.
They are playing really well, especially, of course, with Marchand. But in the Western Conference, it's slim pickings, and of course we're going to be talking to Jesse. And the Kings are at 20%. So the teams that they want to catch are the Oilers and the Blues and the Predators, but their chances are all up in the 90s right now. And every single game, even though like the Kings won the last game versus the Sabres, they still went down 2% because all of the Oilers, Blues, and Predators won. So they all slightly went up. Oilers right now at like 99% chance to win. Blues at 95, Preds at 94, and the Kings at 20%. So it's slim, and even your hope. I would think even the Jets would be at like 5% because they're right there. But it's hard to even there. You think there could be a possibility, but with still 13 games remaining, still pretty slim for some of these teams.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to ask Jesse Cohen what he thinks of the 20% and if he thinks the Kings will make it in or not.
Yeah, for sure. All right, time for this week's Team ISO. This week we are Team ISOing the Los Angeles Kings. Again, it's where we talk more about one specific team. You had our opinion last year. Now we're going out there to the blogs, to the podcasts, and more opinion, more detailed analysis from out there. And this week's Team ISO guest is Jesse Cohen. You can follow him on Twitter at Kingsmen Podcast. Jesse is currently the host of the LA Kings official podcast, All the Kings Men. And of course, you can find it right on LA Kings, right on their website, and right on, of course, iTunes. So
that's right.
Welcome
or Google Play, Spotify Premium, Overcast, anywhere quality podcasts can be found.
Perfect.
And if you'll allow me one plug, subscription links and recent episodes can be found at lakings.com/podcast.
Perfect. That's wicked. So what type of guests you guys usually get?
We've got a pretty wide variety over the years. We talked to the broadcasters. We talked to former players, lots of former players. We just finished up a segment or a series called 50 Kings for the 50th anniversary, where we spoke to 50 former LA Kings. We tend to leave the current players alone.
Okay.
But everybody else is fair game. So talk to executives. I would trying to get the scouting staff, but obviously at the end of the year they've got their hands pretty full.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Sounds like a great show, and yeah, I've listened to a few. It's quite funny too. But let's get into the team, and they've actually been playing fairly well lately, other than the two crappy games on Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Blues game, which was fairly important. They've been still playing pretty good.
Yeah, you can say it was important to beat the team directly ahead of you in the 8th seed for the playoffs. Yeah, that was a kick in the gut. But yeah, they have actually. I haven't crunched the numbers since they beat Buffalo and lost in overtime to Arizona. But prior to that stint against St. Louis, I think they were chugging along at a 6-1-1 clip or 6-2-5 clip since Jonathan Quick came back. That's not bad.
That is pretty good. So is it mostly because of Quick, him coming back, and that's why they're playing a little better? Or is it the additions, Iginla?
So look, obviously I'm going to have a heavy bias just because of my position. So I just want to throw it out there again and make it real clear that everything I say comes from the perspective of trying to justify an awful season. Okay. Peter Budaj came in, and there's been a lot of talk about what a great job that Peter Budaj did, and certainly we don't want to throw Peter Budaj under the bus. He did come in, and should the Kings actually wind up making the playoffs, you could say fairly safely that Peter Budaj saved the season. However, the difference in the way the team plays, I mean, just the instant Jonathan Quick hit the ice, you could see a total change. And I'm not talking about the sort of intangible heart grit, stuff that the anti-analytics crowd would throw out there. I'm talking about like 20 to 30 feet of space opened up between the goalie and the defenders and the offense trying to leave the zone on a rush. And one of the people we've spoken to a number of times is a woman named Kat Silverman. She works for the Arizona Coyotes in their development program. She's a goalie. She writes for a goalie magazine, and I really respect her opinion on goaltending. And one of the things that she stresses all the time is that it's really important for a goalie coach to communicate with the rest of the coaching staff so that they can tailor their game around the strengths of a specific goalie. And obviously the success of a goaltender is a team effort, but the Kings goalie coach is quite good at his job, and the development coach they have in the system, the goalie development coach, is also quite good. And so when Peter Budaj came in, I really believe this. I really believe that they sort of had to reboot their whole mentality this season, and they spent 60 games trying to save the season, trying to protect Peter Budaj, trying to limit shots against. They're currently the lowest shots against in the league. They're not the lowest goals against, but they're pretty good.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, with 60 games left, you get Jonathan Quick back, and now you see, you work in Adrian Kempe, you work in Jerome McGinley, like you mentioned. This is going to sound silly to suggest that their bottom 6 injuries might be partially related to their lack of ability to score, but at this point right now, the lineup that they're icing is every guy they've got available. Like, that's who's on deck. They're resting Nick Shore and Jordan Nolan because Nick Shore and Jordan Nolan have to rest. They can't play right now.
Banged up.
Yeah, so they're scoring more in the power play since Quick came back. They're not scoring as much 5-on-5, which is obviously distressing. I don't know how much of that can be chalked up to it being difficult to work in a new, player like Jerome McGinley. He's obviously not the kind of player that you just insert into your lineup and ignore. So, overall, they're winning more with Quick than they did with Budaj. And to make an incredibly long answer, just a little bit longer, I think that's the I don't want to say it's because of, exclusively because of Quick, but I think everything changed when he came back.
I think hockey players all athletes are very, might I say, need consistency in life. They need their bread buttered the same way. They need to wake up on the right side of the bed, and they need consistency. And when that comes to, they need their starting goalie. And when their starting goalie plays, there goes their confidence. And there goes a nice bit of a relaxed attitude more on the ice. And it changes, I think, for almost every team when their starters in net and when the backups in net, especially when you have a top goalie like a Jonathan Quick or, per se, a Carey Price or anybody like that. And
Carey Price is the one we keep referring back to all year. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, that's exactly right. Carey Price went down. Montreal missed the playoffs to fire their coach. They, everything changed.
You look on paper, the Canadians still had a good team. They still had a great team, but the confidence was shot, and they did not play with consistency, even with, somewhat fair, decent goaltending, and even Budaj. And like I thought, same thing. I thought his numbers were still fairly good. But again, that's what some players need. So
this season, and I'm sorry to just keep belaboring this point, but this season has really convinced me that goaltending stats just aren't worth comparing. And it was something that I've always heard before, but people kept saying, yeah, but wins. Okay, we all understand why wins isn't a fair metric because it has more to do with the strength of your team. We understand why goals against, because your team defense contributes to that. But the thing I kept hearing over and over and over again was save percentage is the one repeatable, or of the mainstream, quote unquote mainstream goalie stats, save percentage is the repeatable standard of whatever. Yeah. And then after this season, watching Peter Budaj and seeing all the people suggesting like, well, who cares when Quick comes back? He's not going to score that many goals. And people were mad that they traded Peter Budaj because, they thought it was disloyal or whatever. And to all those people, I just wanted to say, like, well, if you're so comfortable and fine with Peter Budaj just because he had these numbers, then why don't we just trade Quick and get a king's ransom for him, pardon the pun. And then we'll just move forward with Peter Budaj if that's such a wonderful solution. And I don't think anybody would seriously propose that, and that really sort of says it all to me. So
then the other question on the other side of the coin is analytics guys, and they're maybe not so big on Quick or even Pekka Rinne with high quality shots and their save percentage based on those type of shots. So
I hate to refer back just to the eye test, but I was thinking about this yesterday during the game because the Kings take an awful lot of shots, and they give up very few. It's at one point in the game, I think the shots on goal is like 17-5 or something like that, and it was 0-0 against the Sabres. And I just thought, you know what? At some point, Quick's going to let in a goal. And he wound up not letting in a goal. But at some point, he'll let in a goal. And because he's only faced, at that point, 5 or 7 shots, his save percentage is going to be garbage. And it's not his fault. And he won't have an opportunity to fix that because the game's only so long. And if the team, limits the shots against. And I just thought, well, let me look. Since Daryl Sutter's taken over, let me just look at the goalies that have played roughly the same amount of minutes as Jonathan Quick. And I looked at it, and of course he's faced something like, 1,500 fewer shots over that 5-year period than, someone like Lundqvist.
Yeah.
And I'm not a statistician. I'm not a mathematician. So what I'm saying could be completely wrong. But I just think in any statistical evaluation, whether it's plus minus, whether it's goals, whether it's Corsi, whatever it is, what you're looking for is repeatability and consistency over the entire spread, right? In order for the data to be meaningful, you need some kind of repeatable, consistent pattern to emerge. But there's always outliers. And those outliers, personally for me, are the ones that throw the monkey wrench into the whole thing. So people say plus minus is an imperfect stat. I say, fine, you're right. Plus minus is clearly an imperfect stat. Unless you're Jack Johnson and you're always minus 35.
Yeah.
In which
You're
case,
on the ice that often. Yeah.
In which case, it's really just an indication that you should look closer. So to me, somebody like Quick, who faces an insanely low amount of shots, fewer, fewer shots, on the whole than any other goaltender. And his save percentage is still fairly decent in the middle of the pack. I wouldn't expect it to be as high as somebody who faces 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 more shots over the course of 5 or 6 years. So anyway, like I said, I have a huge bias, and I love Jonathan Quick. So anyway.
Even you look at the year, I think Hasek, when he played for the Wings, he only had like 20 shots a game, and statistically, he looked bad. Everybody's like, "Oh, he's old now, he's bad." No, it's because he's not getting a lot of shots on him, so his stats aren't going to look good.
Yeah.
So, that happens, and it happened even for him. All right, let's get a little bit more into
It's all right.
It's all right. I don't know. When I was talking with Paul at the deadline, I was thinking, hopefully the Kings can maybe make the playoffs. Then could Iginla be the Kings 2017 Jeff Carter, 2014 Marian Gaborik? Is it possible? I don't know. He played pretty good the last few games.
Yeah, I honestly don't think that he can be the sort of singular power that either of those two guys were, just because he's 39. I think Carter was 27 and Gaborik was 30, maybe just 30 or 31 when they brought him in.
Yeah. He does tend to score big goals.
He does. So, I think in tandem, and I've said this before, I think it's sadly unfair that the pressure is falling on these two guys, but Iginla and Kempe, two players at opposite ends of a career. Yeah. They're going to have to combine to be that kind of force, because my theory is that Andrei Kopitar has been playing with an injury all year. Gaborik was out for 19 games or something like that. Toffoli was out for 20 games. So they're clearly a team that struggles to score to begin with. And now on top of that, you throw in some injuries, some lineup changes. So Iginla and Kempe are going to have to be that new face, that jolt of energy, whatever it is. And I think together they've scored 4 or 5 goals since they've both joined the team. It's not quite enough, but it's a good start.
Yeah. It looks like it should be better, maybe, but I don't know. It looks pretty good.
Yeah. We'll see.
But everybody talks about how good the possession stats are with Kings, and you've already mentioned it. But at the same time, if they were a playoff team, I think they're at least 10 goals or more or less than the worst offensive team currently in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And again, you can put it on the injuries, but they still need to find ways from other players outside of Carter, who's, I don't know how, he's still consistently amazing.
Yeah, well, so Carter and Pearson are their only sort of consistent offensive threats this year, and you can see over the last 15 games or something like that, Pearson's put a few in, but Carter hasn't scored other than in the shootout or an empty net over 15 and 16 games. And when the season gets short and the games start to mean, everything to all these teams, that's when the effort ramps up. And unfortunately for the Kings, they're doing exactly what they always do, right? Which is limit the opponent to 20 shots, take 40, score one or two if they're lucky. And it's just really easy to shut down one line if you know the rest of the team can't score. And unfortunately, the Kings, look, we, out here in LA, we love Trevor Lewis, Kyle Clifford, Nick Dowd, Andy Andrioff, right? We love them. We love them to death. Half the team is still around from the 2012 Cup season. But yeah, they're not potent goal scorers. And like I said, if you accept my premise that Kopitar is injured, then he's not a real threat to score either. And so all you really have to do is try and shut down, Jeff Carter's line or a 39-year-old Jerome McGinley. It's a lot easier than a fully operational Kings team.
Yeah, that's for sure. So then, we don't know if they make the playoffs or not, but what are you going to do with Toffoli and Pearson's contracts with there being RFAs at the end of the year, right?
Yeah, I expect they'll both be back. Obviously there's the expansion draft with Vegas, so it's impossible to know what the Kings cap situation is going to look like at the end of the summer. Yeah. They're clearly trying to move specific contracts that are high priced. They've had difficulty doing that.
Is it crossing your fingers that maybe Brown is one of the guys that get selected to Vegas or no?
I wouldn't say crossing my fingers. Okay. I mean, I think Dustin Brown brings value not only on the ice. Obviously he's not the same player he was 5 years ago, but nobody is. But I think he brings value to the franchise beyond just his ability to put points on the board. But we also have, we know for a fact that this team needs flexibility. Every team needs flexibility, needs roster flexibility. And that's what's hurt the Kings specifically the last 2 years and ultimately this year. So if there's a way to move, as we said, some of those high price contracts, guys like Gaborik or Brown, who are not without value and not without offense, but whose contracts just don't justify their output anymore. Obviously that would be ideal. If they can't move them, I still expect that they'll be able to sign Toffoli and Pearson. Pearson is not, he had himself a good year, but he's not a high marquee name, right? Like he's not going to get $6 or $7 million a year. And Toffoli, had he continued to trend in the direction he was before this year, he could have commanded a much larger contract. Now he was injured and he's still on pace for around 22 or 23 goals. So he's not having a terrible year by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know if they'll sign the two of them to another bridge deal, or if they'll sign them to a shorter deal than maybe they both wanted that'll take them into, beyond the UFA age. Or there's been talk that they'll have to make some sort of package and, to trade Gaborik or Brown to move that money off the books. I'm not sure, but I fully expect Tanner Pearson and Tyler Toffoli to be with the Kings moving forward. I should stress, by the way, that I do not speak to hockey ops.
Okay.
This is not inside information. This is completely my opinion.
Cool. Perfect. Paul, do you have any questions about any prospects?
Yeah, you talked about Adrian Kempe joining the team about a month ago, but also Paul Ledoux on the back end. What do you think of his game so far with a month in?
He's been great. He's been fantastic. And it reminds me, not necessarily his game, although there are similar elements, but it reminds me a lot of the progression of Slava Voinov. Voinov came over from Russia and played in the OHL, I believe it was, whereas Ledoux has been in college. But, he stepped in and he's basically grabbed himself a regular roster spot. And they haven't missed a beat with him in there. He's a rookie, obviously, so there's going to be the occasional bad decision or turnover or hesitation, but he's really confident with the puck. He's fast. He's a right-handed shot. I think he's great, and it's players like him and Kevin Gravel and Derek Forbert that make all Kings fans sort of more accepting of the idea that maybe a Braden McNabb or an Alec Martinez or a Jake Muzzin might have to be, the enticement for another team to take one of those larger contracts we talked about. Again, haven't spoken to anybody in hockey ops. This isn't, this isn't a strategy that I'm aware of. It's just some, the sort of scuttlebutt around Kings Reddit.
Nice.
All right, and heading down the Ontario Reign, Michael Mersch is having a pretty good season. He missed some time, 27 points in 38 games. What do you think of Michael Mersch? Is he going to be a King next year?
He may be, depending on how things play out. The thing with Mersch, and look, I love the Reign. I love Mersch. I went and saw a bunch of their playoff games last year and regular season games down the stretch. When they brought up Kempe, one of the things they said was he may actually be better suited for the NHL than the AHL because, the game is faster, your line mates are better, and that may help. I think the opposite may be true of Mersch. He's not exactly a speedster. He is 24. He'll be turning 25 in October. And I think there's an element of Michael Mersch being who Michael Mersch is at this point in his career. I don't see a ton of room for massive evolution of his game. Whereas Kempe, you can see, okay, he's fast. He's got an incredible shot. He's got great eyes, on the ice, but okay, we can teach him how to play a little bit of defense. We can teach him how to, work in transition better. Mersch, I feel like and this is not a knock on Mersch. It's just, he's 24 years old. He's big, and he has a net front presence that a lot of players on this team don't. So if he is brought up, I would expect it to be in a real specific role, but I'm not. And look, I wish him nothing but the best. And if he can come in and put 20 goals on the board, I'll be thrilled. But I'm not expecting, nor am I looking to Michael Mersch to be any kind of solution moving forward.
All right, and another 25-year-old, a guy that has been around and has been a top prospect on multiple teams, Jack Campbell in the net. Is he going to ever be an NHL player, or is he a career AHL guy?
I think it's entirely possible. As I mentioned earlier, the Kings coaching staff, particularly their development staff, has a pretty good track record. And, Peter Budaj was signed this year to a 1-year deal and I think was expected to be the starter in Ontario. And because of injuries to Quick and Zakoff, and because of Zakoff's struggles, Budaj got called up and Campbell was sort of thrust into the fire when I don't think he was expected to. He's played 44 games so far. I don't think that was ever the expectation. And he's got them in a playoff spot on a team that, they've lost Kempe, they've lost Gravel, they've lost Ledoux, they've lost Forbert, they lost a bunch of the veterans that went on to other teams from last season. So for whatever struggles the Kings have had this year, the Reign have had them, exponentially so because they're the feeder team. And through all that, Campbell's played pretty well, and he even played a stint up in LA. Jonah Emu is the development goalie coach. He does, Dusty Emu is the coach. Jonah's his kid. I get them mixed up all the time. Sorry.
That's right.
But or maybe wait. Oh no, if I got it back. No. Dusty's the coach. Jonah's the kid. Sorry. So yeah, if he's gonna have a chance, I think he's got a much better chance playing in LA than he does in the Dallas franchise.
All right. Is there any one King prospect that you're excited about or excited to see in the coming year?
There's two. Well, I'll say. Can I say three? Am I going to waste your guys' time if I say three?
Go ahead.
Okay, one is Justin Auger, who I confess I should have heard of him before I went down and watched a bunch of games last year, but I hadn't. He's 6'7" and he's 229 pounds according to Hockey DB. I don't expect him to be, like an Eric Lindros or anything, but he's fast and he's huge and he's 22. He'll be turning 23 later this year. And he's the kind of guy I could see turning into a Dwight King or a Jordan Nolan, right? Where maybe next year or the year after, if they're looking for a late season call up to bolster the bottom six, but not just a total plugger, right? A player with some speed and some hands. I would be really excited to see how his game progresses because he's just a lot of fun to watch. The next one is Mike Amadio. He's 20. He's center, just a real sort of Kings type player, mid-size, got some nice hands, got some nice vision. He's progressing well nicely. And the other one's Alex Lintuniemi, a Finnish defenseman, 6'3", and also 20. I'm excited for that trio of guys. There's not a lot currently in the pipeline, so it's pretty easy to pick the ones you're excited about. Oh, and Johnny Brodzinski. I should throw him down.
Not that many. I just got at least a handful. Yeah. All right, perfect. And we'll leave you with one more little question. Mm-hmm. Kings, slim chances. It looks like, I think according to Sports Club Stats, they're about 20%. Are you above that, below that?
I'll say above it.
Yeah.
Just because they're close enough to St. Louis that it's not an outrageous proposition. Mm-hmm. And they play Edmonton 3 times.
Yeah.
So if they can beat Edmonton 3 times, no easy feat, I concede. 2 of those are in Edmonton. But if they can beat Edmonton 3 times, that closes that 8-point gap down to 2 points. And then you just need Edmonton to perform slightly worse than the Kings. And the Kings play, a lighter schedule than Edmonton does. So at this point, I'm not going to suggest it's a fait accompli. Obviously, they have an uphill road to climb, and they're not getting any help. But I don't think it's impossible.
Yeah, I hope the Kings can make it, just because they're always a beautiful question mark when it comes to playoff pools and the playoffs and everything that is beautiful with the Stanley Cup playoffs.
I think that should be their new team logo, or motto, frankly. Beautiful question mark. I like that.
Yeah. Jesse, thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Again, thanks for having me, guys.
Again, your podcast is All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings. You can find it right on the LA Kings website, as well as iTunes and everywhere else, right? You were saying.
Yeah, I mean, look, we get people who say, we don't like iTunes, we don't want to support Apple. Yeah, are there options for us? And yes, you can subscribe on PC. Then we also have Linux users. So nice. for any of your listeners that use Linux, any app, any podcasting software that is available on Linux, you can find us there as well.
Perfect. And your Twitter is Kingsmen Podcast.
Correct.
Thank you again for coming on the show, Jesse.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
And now time for the compare. Who will win the Metropolitan Division? Paul, you want your Pens, right? Maybe? Huh? Do you want your Pens, Paul?
The Penguins are going to win the Metro. Do I want them to win the Metro? No. But they're going to win the Metro.
Okay. And I've got the Caps, and I truly think they're going to win the Metro. Paul, tell us why the Pens are going to win.
First off, the last 10 games, Penguins 6-3-1, Capitals last 10 4-5-1. So we're already looking better in the past 10 games. And over those last 10 games, what has changed with the Washington Capitals? They brought in a wrinkle called Kevin Shattenkirk, and I think it disrupted their team. They just haven't been playing nearly as good with Kevin Shattenkirk in the lineup. Yeah, he got suspended, so he's missed a couple games. But Alex Ovechkin is just, where has he gone? 1 goal in the last 12 games, only 6 points in those 12 games. So the Penguins they're playing much better hockey than the Capitals are down the stretch, and I think it's going to stay that way for the last 10 to 12 games. That's where I end, Peter.
All right. That's good. I still think the Caps have a fairly big lead still. Right? No?
3 points.
Oh, there you go. So I still think those are 3 big points in terms of everything. And I think down the stretch, they're going to find another gear. this season hasn't been as negative. Am I right, Paul, though? If you look at it that way, they've been grinding it out and having a steady, simple season. They haven't said anything bad or negative like they did last year. And I think that's going to push them to stay steady and stay at the top of the division. Just by that fact alone, and the mindset of the Capitals and their end goal, be a top team, go far in the playoffs. And I think that's what's going to take them. And again, in the back end, you got Holtby. He's still the best goalie in NHL, as it seems. He's been solid back there. And I think they could still, I think they're going to go deep. And by adding Shattenkirk, it might not work right now. And as it does with some trades, sometimes it takes 10, 20 games for things to click. And I think that might happen for them.
All right. I hope you're right, because I do not want the Penguins to go into the playoffs with a President's Trophy. But I just have a weird feeling that the Penguins also have another gear. So I think they will find that gear. It'll be interesting what Columbus does. We thought they were going to fall off, but they are still...
They're hanging in.
Yeah, they're hanging in. And it's
7-2-1 in the last 10 for the Blue Jackets.
Yeah, they're playing really good hockey, so they're kind of scary. I think you want to be one or back out into the wild card spot, to be honest.
Yeah,
you don't want to be that 2-3 spot in Metro, because the 1, 2, 3, 4 Metro teams of Washington, Columbus, Pittsburgh, Rangers are all super good. So
yeah,
I think the number 1 Metro is key to getting out of the first round unscathed.
Taking maybe out the lowly Leafs.
Yeah.
Come on, Paul. No.
Hey, you said you only wanted a round. You wanted one round. That's all you wanted with the Leafs. So we'll give you one round. Come over, play in Pittsburgh a couple nights, and we'll beat you in 5 and be on our day.
The Leafs never go down quietly. It's always 6 or 7, though.
Yeah, but this
is
is different Leafs. This is the new Leafs, Peter. These young kids don't know what the old Leafs are like.
What did the Leafs do? We don't want to talk about Game 7. But they took the Bruins, who were big and bad at that time, especially, right? Coming off winning like a cup and everything. They took them to 7 games.
Peter, how many players are still on the team from that team?
This is
like 4? 3? Maybe
6
3?
Teams. Old teams, like original 6 teams, they just somehow, doesn't matter who's in the team or the lineup, there's injuries. The year Matt Sundin got injured, and apparently Alan McCauley and Lonnie Bohannes were superstars. It's crazy. It just happens with older teams, original 6 teams, even years like Philly, they're like a lower seed team, and they still upset teams, right, in the playoffs. It happens with older teams and an original 6 team like Leafs. So it's still possible for one of those teams to do something. So I just have faith in sometimes this scenario happening with some of these older teams just pulling off big wins and big series wins, or at least taking the series deep, even when they're expected not to, right?
Well, I'll give you the first round. The Leafs can be in the first round, but that's as far as they go. Unless Washington wins the Metro, then by all means, beat the snot out of them.
All right, Paul, what do you have for us for maybe injuries that could harm some big teams?
Yeah, we're going to just stick with the playoff teams. John Gibson, Anaheim Ducks, no timetable to return a lower body injury. Thankfully, we said last episode that Jonathan Bernier has been playing really good, so hopefully you picked him up, because John Gibson's out for a considerable amount of time. We're not sure when he's going to be back. Another goalie, Craig Anderson, day-to-day, lower body injury, just kind of happened, and nothing really came out of it, and they just kind of said, nope, he's not going to play. So that might hurt Ottawa with the Atlantic Division lead, so might be interesting there. Another goalie, tons of goalies, holy smokes. Henrik Lundqvist, a few more weeks, but he's for sure going to be back by the playoffs, so don't worry about your playoff hopes, Rangers. It's a muscle strain, so kind of interesting. Lundqvist is usually a pretty healthy guy, but the season's been an odd one for him. A couple of forwards, Artem Anisimov, no timetable, a wrist injury. Look out for John Hayden, recently signed a pro contract out of the NCAA. he is playing with Taves and Panic on the top line, so throwing him right into an excellent prime scoring position. So watch out for John Hayden taking Anisimov's spot there. You said last episode, Aaron Ekblad, concussion, 5 to 10 more days, so that hurts the Panthers. Mark Stone, week to week, a leg injury. Jacob Trouba, unknown upper body injury. Martin Handel, he's got strep throat. Not the mumps, Peter. He's got strep throat.
Oh, no.
He's day to day. And Alex Burakovsky's probably going to return next week. He's got a hand injury. But I wanted to mention the Penguins are just decimated. Unbelievable. Yeah. Hornqvist, Hagelin, Hainsey, Letang, Mata, Malkin, and Daly are all out.
Did Gunsel look like Gunsel got hit pretty good in this New Jersey game as we're recording?
I hope not. That would just suck. 3 of our top 9 forwards out and 4 of our top 6 defensemen out. They're all supposed to be back in time for the playoffs. Hagelin is questionable. They say 4 weeks from like 3 or 4 days ago, so that's going to be close to playoffs, but he should be okay. Might be interesting. These guys might be fresh coming into playoffs, so that might help the Penguins. But right now, they're playing with a lot of AHL guys, that's for sure. And
you still think they're going to win the Metro?
Yeah.
All right.
They got Matt Murray. All right. Matt Murray's unreal.
Yeah.
Calder winner.
Calder? He should be maybe nominated. All right, let's do this. Saturday's picks. Boom, here we go. First game on the table. The Avalanche and the Red Wings, they're fighting for who's the worst. So I'm going to go with, I don't know, I really think the Avalanche are slightly playing better right now, and the Red Wings want to lose games. So I'm really on the fence with this one. But I'm just going to go with the Red Wings because they're at home. Paul?
That's exactly my same train of thought. Home team in this terrible game. Have we come up with like a motto? Tank for Patrick or tank for Hischier? Or
I haven't heard one.
Yeah, I haven't heard one yet either. They're kind of hard names to come up with, so.
Yeah, I guess so. All right, next one. Blue Jackets, Islanders. I'm going in with Islanders because I'm scared for the Leafs. So that's why I'm going with Islanders.
Oh, win-win situation for you. I like it. I picked the Blue Jackets. They are just way too good.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with there. The Blue Jackets are still fairly decent on the road. All right, Rangers, Wild. I don't know. The Wild aren't playing so well right now. So I'm actually going to go with the Rangers right now.
Oh, back-to-back New York teams. All right. So we know where your heart is, Peter.
No, it's not in New York, but okay.
I am going to go with the Wild in this game. They're just far superior. They are also in a playoff race. It might not be the same as what the Rangers are in, but they're fighting for that top central spot against the Blackhawks. They're 3 points back, so I'm going with the Wild to win.
And that's why I'm, in the next game, going with the Hawks to beat the Leafs. It's Saturday night. It's the Hawks. I'd be shocked if the Leafs win this one. So I'm going to go with the Hawks.
I'm going to stick with the Hawks as well. And you're playing a win-win situation. You pick the Islanders because if they lose, then you win with the standings, the actual NHL standings. And then you pick Chicago because if Toronto wins, you win in the NHL standings. You're doing this the smart way. I see, Peter. I see.
No. I don't have
covering your tracks.
All right. Next game, Canadiens and Senators. Paul, what do you have?
I'm going with Montreal. This is battle for the Atlantic Division. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah. I still, like I said before, I told you a few weeks ago, I still think Montreal is going to pull out the division, so that's why I'm also going with Montreal.
And no, Craig Anderson definitely hurts Ottawa.
Yep, it does. Even though Condon's been pretty decent, but, we'll see what they do. Capitals at the Lightning. This is, again, I'm on the fence here. And the Capitals haven't been that good lately. So I'm going to expect them to maybe start winning some more games right now. So I'm going to pick Capitals. Paul?
This is where I'm covering my tracks. I'm picking the Capitals as well. Because if they lose, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Hey, is it a Mike Condon revenge game? Montreal, Ottawa? He was a Hab, wasn't he? He's going to be going up against the Habs?
Yeah.
That's exciting. Cool. I might watch that game tomorrow night.
Next, we got the Nashville Predators at Carolina. My sister is going to this game, so I've got to pick the team that she's cheering for, which, of course, is Carolina since they're at home. So go, sis. Give me some luck here.
Oh, boy. I'm going with the Predators because the Hurricanes just aren't very good.
Yeah. All right. Blues, Coyotes. Blues need wins. They really need to win this one to, get a better playoff spot and stay in there. So I'm just going to go with the Blues. Paul?
I'm going there as well, and the Coyotes are hot garbage, so just makes sense.
Then of course, we go to Canucks and Oilers. I'm not even looking at standings because some of these games seem obvious now in the late end, even though I'm usually bad at the late games. But I'm going to go with the Oilers. Canucks seem to be a little bit of free-falling lately. They were close to maybe a playoff spot a couple of weeks ago, but not anymore. And Oilers want to solidify their spot. So, Oilers.
And talking about being terrible on the West Coast games, you went 0 for 3 on the West Coast last week. Just throwing that out there. I'm going to go with Edmonton as well.
Good job, Paul. All right. Then we finish up with the Ducks and the Sharks, And the Sharks are excellent at home. And the Ducks aren't very good away. So I'm just going to go straight off on that and say Sharks.
I am going to go with you, so I hope your predictions get better on the West Coast because we went exactly the same. So should be interesting.
Right. Perfect. That's it for this episode. Thank you for listening. And again, go on to blamhockey.com. Check out our posts. We got a great new one from Sean Sierro. He wrote a great one about what's going on with the Ice Caps in St. John's. Looks like they're going to be going. Is there a future of maybe another team coming to St. John's? Check that out. The blogs, we've got and all our old blogs from the trade deadlines and everything else right on blamhockey.com. And we're on Facebook. And, of course, right on our iTunes for our podcast or right from our website. Listen to us and subscribe, rate, and review us. See you next time.
Bye.